All right. Hey, folks, it's Faz here from Faz Lifts. Today is going to be another in the How I Would Improve series. And this video it will be on German volume training or the 10x10 workout. So first of all, thanks for making it onto my channel. Go ahead and click like if you're here. If you have any questions of your own, please do pop them in the description and I'll use that as fuel to make more videos. All right, so let's crack on with the start of this and go with this summary. So firstly, this is commonly referred to as the 10x10 program as it relates to 10 sets of 10 on an exercise. There's no universally accepted way to set this up, so there are plenty of variations. However, I think most of the critiques are applicable to different ways of setting it up. It's really just the critiques are mostly applicable to the exercise selection followed by the actual set and rep regime. So the most common setup appears to be from Poliquin, which is 3 sessions across either 5 days or 7 days. The routine uses antagonistic supersets to allow for greater rest between each set. And again, there is a bit of discrepancy as to what exactly the rest period is. Some people say 60 seconds, some people say 90. But you get more rest between the same exercise and less rest between each exercise. Generally, the setup is chest and back with legs and abs and arms and delts. I have seen it chest and back, legs and delts, and just arms. And I've also seen it, as I say, in either 5 or 7 days. As with everything, there's a good degree of variation between the commonly accepted ways, but that's roughly what we've got. All right, so it kind of looks like this. This is one of the chest and back days. This is a rough example of what it looks like. I pulled this off the internet. So you have your main exercise for the chest, which goes for 10 sets of 10. Then you have your main exercise for the back. The idea is those two should be supersetted. So you can pick something where you can superset it, which is convenient to superset. So you could set up a bench with dumbbells next to a pull-up bar, for example. Then you have incline dumbbell rows followed by one-arm dumbbell rows. You can use the same incline for both exercises, and you do those for just 3 sets as a little bit of an adjunct. So you end up with roughly 13 sets per body part per every 5 to 7 days. All right, now, like I like to do, I like to give you guys a bit of a historical perspective on German volume training to put it into the context of where the program comes from and why we're getting it now. Why is it so popular? Now, contrary to what a lot of people think, it wasn't actually invented by Poliquin. So I have heard people question whether Poliquin was German, and I don't know whether he is or not, but it wasn't invented by Poliquin. It was actually originated in the 70s. So 50 years ago now, there was a weightlifting coach from Germany, the German national weightlifting coach, Rolf Feser. He used that with his athletes in the off-season to gain mass and move up a weight category. That was how he used it. Presumably, although I've not read any further into this, but presumably they were doing some form of weightlifting alongside the 10x10 workout. So we don't really know how Rolf set it up. The setup that we commonly see with supersets and across 5 to 7 days, that is from Poliquin. So we don't know how coach Rolf Feser set things up. We just know that he used a 10x10 regime. It was also used by the Canadian weightlifting team in the 80s. And also very famously used by a lady called Bev Francis, who, if some of you know who she is, she owns Bev's Gym in America. She was massively dominant in shot put and in powerlifting in the 80s. Phenomenal athlete. Poliquin then repopularized this in the 90s in some magazines, worldwide publications, as well as on the internet. That was in the early 2000s. Now, it's important to note that Vince Gironda had his 8x8, and it was a similar type of setup. However, that if it needs to be covered, it will be covered in a separate video because it was popularized by Gironda far earlier than any of this. So Gironda was around in the 40s and 50s talking about his 8x8, and his 8x8 routine typically involves a lot more volume than GVT. So that's possibly a separate thing which we should discuss at another time. But his workout volumes would be upwards of 20 sets per body part per week, and they were just set up very, very differently. So I'll cover that in a separate critique if there's enough interest. All right, so moving on, let's look at some of the positives. Firstly, big positive to all of these programs that I've critiqued over the weeks, they give you a structure. Okay. Now, as you guys know from my videos, one of the major reasons why people don't see results is they do chronic routine changing, CRCing. Okay. They're always CRCing. So they go from one routine to another, to another, to another. And as I've explained to you guys before, the first few weeks of any routine is just simply getting used to it. So if you're constantly flitting around from routine to routine, you're never getting to the meat and potatoes of a routine to when you actually make the progress. And I've told you guys, people will do this for months. People will do this for years. People will literally do this for decades. So it gives you a structure. Also, it focuses you on progression. So assuming you stay with the routine for long enough, it'll focus you on progression. The idea is as soon as you hit 10 by 10 on the workout, you then increase the weight. So there's always a focus on increasing weight. It also forces a reasonable amount of volume. So it's roughly 13 sets per body part per 5 to 7 days. And for you guys who are familiar with the current research, recommendations are anywhere between 12 to 20 sets. So it's right about there. And finally, it gives you a form of periodization. You have hard phases and recovery phases. So in general, there are some positives, you know. It's not just a meme hipster kind of program. Like, there are some positives there. All right, now let's look at the negatives. So the interesting thing about this routine is that the Poliquin stresses the importance of rest periods. Like, he very much stresses the importance of keeping rest periods timed and to the clock. Now, as a consequence of that, you're not allowed to increase the rest periods as the workout goes on to facilitate the use of more weight, which means that the weight that you start off with, you have to end with the same weight, which means you've got to start with a very light weight because fatigue will start to accumulate. You want fatigue to accumulate towards the end. You don't want it to accumulate right at the beginning, because if it accumulated right at the beginning, you'd never make it to the end. So the weights that are used are typically about 60% of your 1 rep max. Now, 60% of a 1 rep max for most people is going to be about a 20 to 30 rep max, which means the first 5 or more sets are going to be extremely easy. So you're doing 10 sets, whoopity-doo. The first 5 sets are extremely easy. The question arises, how many of those 10 sets are actually going to be useful? Think about it. How many of those sets are actually going to be useful? Because you're purposely pulling back. You have to pull back because you've got to time the rest periods to make it through all 10 by 10. You've got to start getting fatigued by about the 8th or 9th set. So the first 5 sets, by necessity, have to be easy. They have to be. The relative intensity per set, therefore, is extremely low. Literally, your first 5 sets, you're just going through the motions. They're not even warm-ups at that stage. So to give you guys an example, if you are a 100-kilo bench presser or a 220-pound bench presser, you would be using 60 kilos or 135 pounds for your rep work. Like, it's not much. That is the type of weight that most people can do at least 20 reps with, if not 30, depending on the exercise. So that's a big negative. Like, there's a lot of time there where you're doing work sets which have questionable value. Also, it really throws the whole routine into question because it's like, well, how much volume am I actually doing? Like, you guys know when you're doing working sets and you're working it in the gym, you're going at it. You know what a working set feels like. This isn't that. So it throws into question how much volume you're actually doing. Next negative is due to the lack of exercise range, because you're only basically doing 1 or maximum 2 exercises per body part, you're encouraged to do a lot of the basics. So it's explicitly written by Poliquin that you shouldn't shy away from the basics. You should be doing your squats, you should be doing your bench presses, your military presses. So you're not able to do a routine which is a lot more well-rounded, like, for example, squats, leg presses, and leg extensions for better development. Like, a prime example is squats and leg presses versus leg extensions. We know that with a squat and a leg press, you're not getting that much rec fem development at all. With a leg extension, you are. So variety does help even in the same muscle group. Now, the other thing is, if you're continuously just hammering away on the same exercise, even if the weight is light, and even if it's an exercise that you're well suited to, like me, for example, I can deadlift till the cows come home. But if you ask me to do 10 sets of stiff leg deadlifts every 5 days, like that's a lot of work. So you expose yourself to repetitive stress injuries, even if it's an exercise you're suited to, and even if the volume, even if the relative intensity is very low. And finally, here on this slide, there are advanced GVT routines which focus on 10 sets of lower reps. But at that point, like it's mostly a strength routine, so it's not really why we're doing it. And why wouldn't you just do a more time-proven strength routine? And I'd say also another thing is at the advanced stages, you really shouldn't be doing these types of generic routines anyway. You should be doing things which you know work for you because you're advanced. All right, next up in terms of negatives, a big one. This should appeal to you guys because it's something that everyone can think about. It's just boring. You've got, a lot of you guys have just come out of lockdown. If you're listening to this in 2021, great. If you're listening to this years later, then yeah, lockdown. Great. I got back into gyms about 10 weeks ago now. You got all this beautiful, lovely equipment, you got leg extensions, you've got hack squats, you've got leg presses, pendulum squats, all these kind of crazy quad exercises that you can do, which are amazing, which fit beautifully, and which work your quads to the absolute hilt. And what are you doing? Well, I'm doing squats. Do you fancy anything else? Can't do it. Got to do squats. All right. So yeah, it's just boring, like who wants to stick to one exercise? As much of a machine as you might be, it's just plain boring. Next up, this is a particular one which it might appeal to you guys. It's to some of you guys at home. It doesn't really appeal to me. It's very sort of canned, pseudo-manly advertising. Like this is a quote from Paulo Quinn, and he's quoted and saying stuff like this in many interviews. It'll take you 60 days to go through the cycle, but you should gain 8 to 10 pounds of lean tissue by the end of those 2 months. This is not a program for the faint of heart. It's very rewarding if you have the guts to complete it. Stuff like that. There's two things there, really. Firstly, the point that I'm making is, one, it's very sort of obvious advertising. Like he's obviously questioning your masculinity, questioning your guts, questioning your manhood, right? To get you to do the program. It's very obvious, like for some people that plucks on the right, strings for them. They're like, yeah, great. I'm going to prove them wrong. For me, I just roll my eyes with stuff like that. It's just like, oh God, I don't need to do 10 by 10 on a crappy generic routine to prove that I'm a man. Thank you very much. And the other thing is the claim of 8 to 10 pounds of lean tissue by the end of the 2 months. That's not going to happen, Charles. Now, next, if we go ahead and have a look. All right, how I would improve GVT. So, first of all, I would use a wider pool of exercises. All right. A wider pool of exercises allows for greater relative intensity per exercise. So rather than 13 sets of 2 exercises, how about 12 or 13 sets of, say, 3 to 4 exercises? Yeah. So within each block of sets for every exercise, you can go harder and heavier. You can also vary things up as well. You can use different rep ranges. You may want to do a pyramid of squats, for example. You may want to do sets across of squats. You may want to do squats whereby the reps drop down. You may want to do a workout of leg extensions, leg presses, squats, followed by single leg work. That's 4 exercises for 3 sets each. Provides you with a good degree of balance, lack of repetitive stress, higher degree of relative intensity. Also, you get unilateral work as well, which is highly useful for the legs. And you get to use exercises which are suited to you. So I would use a wider pool of exercises to begin with. Next, I would personalize the exercise choice. Quite simply, if you are pigeonholed into just doing the compound barbell basics, you are massively limiting yourself. And next, I would personalize the exercise volume. Not everyone needs the same volume. Like me right now, I'm older. I need a lot more volume than I did when I was younger. Just the way it is. A lot of you guys, varying ages that you are, varying biologies, all that kind of varying response to training, you might need more or less training. Just the way it is. And fourth point here, I would put a great emphasis on working the muscle. You know, like, what are we in the gym for? This is a hypertrophy routine. This is a muscle growth routine. We're in the gym to stimulate muscle tissue so it grows, rather than this just weird pseudo manly, have you got what it takes? Have you got the guts to complete this? Like, just encouraging people just to get through a workout, just to survive a workout. I want more of that. Like, we can do better than that. Like, reductionist thinking helps to motivate people. This is one of the reasons why people love GVT. It's like, yeah, great. I'm not satisfied with my body. I've had a crappy weekend. The girlfriend's dumped me. Some random guy at the gym said I'm looking fat today. Monday, that's it. I'm going to start GVT. I'm going to show everyone. Like, reductionist thinking helps to motivate people and simplify things. But we can do better than that. It's 2021. Like, this is the age of information. We can do, like, it's GVT was fine in the early 2000s because there was a real lack of information out there. We can do better than that now, guys. And for strength, I'll just give you a quick sort of, may as well just give you a quick plug of my PDF that I wrote and released a few days ago called The Tactician, which will be linked in the description. It is specifically a strength routine, and it has a combination of various techniques that I used to hit maximum strength when I was training for strength. But that's my review and how I would improve German volume GVT. In summary, I think it was good back in the day, all right? And I say that not because of human biology has changed, because it hasn't, but I say that because there was a real lack of information. And so it's just, here you go, throw a bunch of volume on top of what you're already doing. And yes, as we know, effective volume is a prime driver of growth. So it would have done something. But right now, we can do better than that. We've had 50 years since the 70s. Okay, we've had 10 years of good specific hypertrophy research, which is telling us a lot of cool things. Like, we know we've got better than that. Also, never mind the research. I mean, geez, we've got 50 plus years of actual bodybuilding training, you know, which doesn't look like this. So whether you're trying to find information from gym goers or from the research labs or a combination of the two, there are better alternatives out there for all the reasons that I've specified. Right, guys, hope you found that useful. If you have, hit like, subscribe if you haven't done so already. I would appreciate the support. I'm trying to get my subscriber base to 1,000 for various sort of community features that are unlocked, which is kind of cool, so I can engage with you guys more. I will be carrying on the videos regardless, as I'm getting a lot of good feedback. So please do share these around and tell your friends to subscribe as well. That would be very much appreciated. And any requests for videos, please pop them down. I'll be doing this multiple times per week for the foreseeable future. So all the best, folks. Have a great day, and I will see you